What's up guys, we are doing another speedrun today. A lot has came out since last time, so let's just get into it. Starting with the new CRINEAR DAYBREAKs, these follow a smooth, clean, balanced, inoffensive sound signature. They are a JM1 boosted kind of sound. If you haven't tried the new metas, it doesn't do anything amazing. It's not going to specialize in any region or genre. It does the job, but if you're looking for just a all-rounder that's not going to be fatiguing, not going to be shouty, pretty smooth, these are a decent option. They have a good package, the cable, the case is solid. Now the DAYBREAKs probably aren't gonna be your favorite sound because I often found myself reaching for other sets after reviewing them. If it wasn't for the review, I probably most likely wouldn't listen to these outside of testing. So with that in mind, and the additional factor that the P50s and the SL224 already exist, they are similar in the sound, JM1 bass boosted, same driver configuration on the P50s. For most people who already have an all-rounder or have the P50s already, I would say this is probably a pass for you. It doesn't do anything special. I don't think you really need another one of these sets unless you want to support Crin, then go for it. But for those who are new to the hobby or haven't tried the JM1 bass boost or quote-unquote meta kind of sound yet, these would be a solid option, especially when it goes on sale. I would say a rec for those and a pass for the others. So I'm going to split the difference and I'm going to put the DAYBREAK in between at maybe. And similar to the DAYBREAKs, the SL224 from Meyer is also going to go into maybe, because although this is slightly more detailed and slightly better in the bass texture versus the P50s and the DAYBREAK, these are also few $100. So if we're talking about value, both the P50s and the DAYBREAKs would just be better. They are very similar in the sound, very similar technical performance, slight edge to the SL224s. It's basically a fancier version of the P50s and the DAYBREAKs, and depending on how much money you want to spend, you can go for either one of these three. Then after that, we got the ZIIGAAT CRESCENT. This is basically a warmer and slightly more sparklier version of the CRINEAR metas. Basically the metas, you just can't get them anymore, so ZIIGAAT found the chance. They made something very similar. So for those who haven't got the metas, you missed your chance on the limited run. This would be a good option to that. Technical performance wise, these are slightly below the Astros and slightly above the Odysseys. You can basically imagine these as a more airier and sparklier version of the Odysseys. For the price, I think it is a decent value and I would recommend it if you haven't tried the other meta Iems already. If you have, like if you have the Astros, you tried the metas, even the Arcanus, then you probably don't need these as well. But if you haven't, give these a shot. These are pretty solid. Then as for its older brother, the ZIIGAAT Lunas, going off of my unit, which is warm and airy, I would highly recommend trying the Lunas, especially if you have a lot of rock, metal, R&B, hip-hop in your library. They work very well for that. It's smooth in the upper mids. You get the airy treble, you get a solid like mid-bass slam. The texture is good, the separation is good. Overall, it gives you like a nostalgic, warm but airy, dreamlike kind of feeling. Very unique in the sound. The Lunas do stand out from its competition. It's basically a warmer version of the 7 Acoustic Supernovas. Very good for hip-hop, rock, metal. If your library fits that, then definitely give these a shot. Then moving on, we got the TRUTHEAR Pure, and this is different from what people expected as a successor, quote-unquote successor to the Hexa. These are very different. They are a lot warmer, darker, and more full and bodied versus the cleaner, neutral, all-rounder sound of the Hexas. This might be a bit of a miss for most people just because you do need to scale them up for the vocals to just stand out more, because at mid to lower volume it does sound a bit recessed, a bit quote-unquote low res and congested in the overall playback. You do need to give these some scaling, some juice for them to really open up. It is a scaling set and I do enjoy it for hip-hop, R&B, rock. This is probably a maybe. For most people, probably a pass. Then after that, we got the TANCHJIM Fission, and this is basically a cheaper version of the TANCHJIM Origin. They are using the exact same drivers, same sound signature. They sound basically identical if you A/B them. And the main difference is that the Origin is just fancier in the design, the plating, you get a better cable, you get a better case. But aside from that, the Fission actually has more tuning options. You get the neutral sound of the Origin, but then you also get the bass roll off, which I don't really recommend anyways. If you're looking for a neutral, full, smooth, good vocal playback kind of set, then these are a pretty good option for the price. It probably goes on sale for $100. So I would put these in the rec tier for those who are looking for something neutral. Next, we got the KEFINE QUATIO, and these are a very versatile and flexible set when it comes to the amount of tuning options you get. 3 different tuning sounds. You get a bassier one, you get a slightly warm sound, and then you get a balanced all-rounder that is good for basically every other genre. These strike a good balance from being too fatiguing and sharp, but also dynamic and engaging enough. If you're looking for an all-rounder but also want to play around with like a bassier or warmer sound signature, the QUATIOs would be a good option for that, and I do recommend them, especially since they're around 130 bucks. Then moving up to under $300, we got the TANCHJIM and Effect Audio Force. Now these are a vocal centric track, works very well at mid volume for ballads, acoustic, indies, you know, like singer-songwriter stuff. The vocals are very powerful, extended, clean, smooth. It kind of reminds me of like a even more vocal centric version of the P50s. It does have a bass roll off and a gimp when it comes to the upper mid section. So for those who are looking for more low end impact, you know, more treble extension, more air, more I guess like brilliance, more sharpness in the sound, more dynamics, these are not going to be the set for you. This is just like a very clean vocal centric approach to the I guess the JM1 target. Now value wise, these are a bit expensive at $300. I really do like the design. It's very clean, very slick, futuristic, simple. You know, you get the matching cable with the plating, and then the case is also very nice. But for $300 and a 2DD set is just a bit too expensive in my opinion. I think these should be maybe like $150 max, $200 max, right? $300 is definitely pushing it, especially considering you can get much more technical stuff at its price, because it's, again, this is not the most technical IEM. It also doesn't scale too well because of the extra gain in the 2K region. K-pop, J-pop, EDM, pop, those just get a bit like shouty and thin in the vocals because you also don't have a lot of low end to kind of balance it out as well. So again, very good for a clean mid-range, like a mid-volume set for vocals, but aside from that, a very niche set and also very expensive for the price. I'm going to say this is a pass for most people. But moving on, we got the TANGZU TIAN next. These are a neutral, clean, balanced kind of sound, very technical in the detail. It has the TANGZU household edgy, slightly sharper imaging to the overall playback. The cable, the case, the unboxing is very good. The only main nitpick is the price, because at around $600 you can get ESTs. You can get 4 ESTs with the VADER, and then you also get ESTs with the Mega 5. In terms of like value, I wouldn't say these are the best. I think they could have probably priced it at around like $450-500, and the low end can be a little bit thin to some people, a little bit, I don't want to say anemic, but not as forward, textured, impactful as some other stuff around its price, like the Mega 5 or even like the Hype Force at $400. So overall, if you can find it on sale for $450, I would say go for it, but at retail, I'm gonna say this is a maybe. Then moving on, we got the EPZ K9s, and these are a slight V shape of Harman. They have the fullness in the mid bass, but it has a gradual like bass glide into a upper mids cut, and then a smooth treble and upper mids extension. Pretty well balanced while giving you enough dynamics, enough like engagement to the sound, while being a good all-rounder backed up by good technicalities as well. And you can find these for around $300, which I think is a pretty good price, and I do recommend giving these a shot if you do need an all-rounder that's like better than the Super Mix 4, the EM10s in terms of tonality, but without sacrificing the technicalities and being quote-unquote musical at the same time. Then after that, we got the HEARTFIELD CU8s. These are a very pretty set. The plate design, the metal build, the overall packaging is just very solid, but they are pretty expensive for a 4BA set at around almost $300. If you can find these on sale for under $200, close to like $170, $150 even, I would say go for it. These are a slight warmer version of Harman 2019. They don't do anything like unique or special, but if you found Harman 2019 to be a bit shouty, you wanted a bit like warmness in the sound, but you still want a good all-rounder, and you really dig the design, I would say wait for these to go on sale and get them for under $200, because sound-wise, they are okay, nothing unique, but the main selling point would be the aesthetics, so I would put them in maybe if you can get them on sale. Moving on, next we got the SOFTEARS Studio 2s, and these are a bit of a controversial IEM because number one, the price is a bit expensive for a 2BA set at $170, considering the technicalities, or quote-unquote the lack of technicalities. I would say if you can get these for $80, this would be a maybe, but for most people this is going to be a pass, because unless you're listening very loud at mid volume, these are just very low res, quote unquote low res, dark, very warm. you do need to scale these up a bit to just give it more volume. It opens up, it becomes a high volume, like analog, warmer, kind of like very immersive, intimate sounding. The overall build, cable, and just overall packaging is also pretty mid considering the price at $170. You can find a lot better stuff value wise. You know, you got the Super Mix 4, you got the Defiant, you got the EW300, no, all cheaper and all like way more technical than these Studio 2s. If you're musicians and you need something that's like kills all the shout, the fatigue on stage, these are good for that. But for enjoying music and just for listening to music, I would say nah. Next, we got the DUNU VULKAN 2, and these are also a controversial set because it has a scoop in the low end. It's also kind of neutral, also pretty expensive at $350 as well. I would say if you listen to a lot of like acoustics, indie, clean ballads, you don't have a lot of low end, then these work very well for a neutral vocal centric playback. I did enjoy them for those songs that did come on, but if you're looking for an all-rounder, if you're looking for something for like hip-hop, rock, R&B, the lack of just, you know, low end is just very obvious, very audible. So unless your library fits the VULKAN 2 to the T, I would say this is a pass. And it's also very like expensive to kind of just blind buy and try it. If it was like cheaper, like $100, then, you know, maybe I go for it to try it for the sound. But at $350 or almost $400, probably a pass for most people. But as for a cheaper set, we got the KZ VADER Pros. These are a sub-bass focused, you know, Harman inspired IEM. They are similar to the HBB Cons in the sense that the sub-bass is very like bouncy and you get the scoop in the lower mids to kind of separate the low end and give that more emphasis in the sub bass texture. But the downside is that you do get a scoop in the lower mids, and the upper mids can be a bit shouty and thin because of the boost and then the scoop. So depending on what your library is and what you're looking for, these are pretty fun and they are pretty cheap because they're like around $30 and then probably goes on sale to like 15 or even 10. I don't know, it's KZ, right? Value wise, you can't really beat KZ, but their QC is not the best. And if you look at the squicks from like just a lot of different reviewers, the databases, they look very different with a lot of the KZ IEMs. So because of the QC and because of KZ, this is a maybe, but unfortunately I can't really recommend the KINERA CELEST WYVERN Black Remastered Edition. This is a very, you know, KINERA house sound. It's got the scoop in the upper mids, but then you also got the gain around like 1 to 3K. It's very forward in the vocals, especially since the sub bass, the low end, is also, I don't want to say tame, but it's more neutral and not as, you know, boosted versus some other stuff. And then the treble, it's not as well extended as something like the TANCHJIM, Bunny, or the, you know, Zero Ultimas. And compared to those sets, this just sounds a bit like lower res comparatively, and it is more expensive. So I'm gonna say this is gonna be a pass for most people, especially if you already have the Ching, the other Abyss, the WYVERN stuff, and this is just like another one of those. And as an all-rounder, a lot of other stuff just does the sound better. You got the TRUTHEARs, EW100, you got the newer TANCHJIM stuff, the Bunny, Zero Ultimas, the Monarch 2s now. Doesn't have the vocal shout because the gain is pretty elevated and then just falls off any trouble afterwards. So the vocals get really highlighted, which can be a bit shouty for some people. So I'm gonna say probably a pass. And similarly, I would also pass on the HISENIOR Crystal, mainly because of two reasons. Number one, these are a bit peaky, a bit shouty, a bit energetic in the upper mids. These are just basically a V shape, and then also the price is just a bit too much at $400. For $400, there's just a lot of competition at that price. You got the T Pros, you got the Hype 4s. The Martilos, in my opinion, is a better alternative if you want a slight V shape, bassy, fun kind of sound. You can get the Martilos for less than $300 on sale. So number one, the price is just a bit too expensive, and then especially it's custom BAs. Like you have the Sonians on the Hype 4s at the same price, and then you got the T Pros with the Nuos at the same price or cheaper, right? So it just doesn't make sense in that sense. And then the overall sound is also, it's just a V shape. So I don't see the point of buying this when there are just a lot of great IEMs out there. But speaking of the Punch Audio Martilos, these are a very good set if you want a bass head, sub bass focus, slight V shape kind of sound, very engaging, basically identical to the HBB Punch, with the main difference being that it's like slightly sharper in the imaging and not as like full in the sound, not as full and smooth because it doesn't have ESTs, but it's also like $100 cheaper than the HBB Punch, right? So there are trade-offs, and overall, if you want a balanced, quote-unquote balanced bass head kind of sound, you want the slam, but you also want the extension in the upper mids and the treble as well as the bass head then I would definitely recommend these. Then lastly, we got the THIEAUDIO Monarch Mark IVs, the Return of the King. Very good all-rounder, versatile. You get the switches, warm, bassy, smooth, clean, balanced sound, very technical. Now, if you want something more vocal focused, then I think the Monarch Mark IIs are still better in the vocals. It pops out more, a little bit more quote-unquote dynamic, less smooth, but overall more, I guess, engaging when it comes to the artists and singers. But as an all-rounder, these are kind of hard to beat, especially this is just a cheaper version of the Prestige LTD with an additional, tuning switch, a warmer sound on top of that. And the overall build quality is very nice. The cable is pretty solid. The case is really ass. I will say the only nitpick I have is that the case is like made out of cardboard and cloth. And it is sturdy, but it just feels very cheap. And it's already like falling apart. At least mine, right? So case wise, get a better case. But aside from the shitty case, as an endgame all-rounder set, I would definitely recommend the Monarch Mark IVs. Go demo these because they are a bit thicker in the size compared to normal IEMs. I would say they're around the same size as the Monarch Mark II, maybe less like wide, but the thickness is still pretty thick. So you really gotta like jam them in your ears. Aside from that, I wouldn't spend any more on an all-rounder because diminishing returns are just huge. But yeah, give these a shot. But aside from that, that's it for this speedrun. Let me know what your most favorite recent IEM is. My throat is completely dead. My water bottle is empty. Throat is parched. Speedrun done. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see everyone in the next one.
Shout out to Dom Q, Rark's Cat, Mystic Spoon, Attack, B Urak, Disco Scaldus, Walker Standard, Patrick, User, Contain Guava Juice Gains, Mr. Gorillas, Polly J, Giseng Young, Christopher Jackson, Henry Claudia, Son of a Horse, 777 ZK, Wizard, Obi, Triple Well Extended, Frickalicious, Ricardo, Tapis Art, Choco Norris, Tamat, Shen Bakale, FKSRG, Cousin Fat Fat, Julius, Dead Riddle, Belha, Ardmore, Nico, Parham, Nicholas, Brandon, Addy, Circle Gaming, Harder to Play, Wayu, Michael, Denir, Jacob, Vinicius, LL, Andy, Trackstar, Sammy, Funtime, Sergip, Peter, Someone Help Me, Oh Really, Siracool, Little Meat, Ryan, Lithan, Shori, Sweet Rain, Tortcog, I'm J-Rack, Raphael, Ori, Hakase, June, Over Analog, and Lama. Thank you guys so much for the support.